Five Nights at Freddy's movie was shit. Yeah, you heard that right. Maybe it wasn't shit. It sure was disappointing for myself, but not for this guy right here. I'm joined by Josh once again, the guy I do all the horror stuff here on the Movie Pod with. Five Nights at Freddy's definitely the most anticipated movie of the year. Josh is a very big FNaF fan. I'm a fan. Like I wouldn't say I'm a hardcore diehard fan. I don't know much of the lore. I don't know any of the lore. I played the first game when I was a little kid. I was playing the first game today. I've played the fourth game, so I've played two of the games, the first one and the fourth one. Josh, however, he's played like all the games. I think he's read a book or two. He knows a lot about the lore. So we thought we would structure this podcast episode review of the FNaF movie as a critic versus fan. Me being the critic, Josh being the fan of the franchise. Because I watched it Friday night. I was very excited to watch it. You know, just FNaF, man. I remember playing the first one when I was a kid on my iPad, and the nostalgia was there. You know, there were bits throughout the film I recognized. I'm like, oh my god, that's cool to see from the original game, or from other games like bits of 2, 3, 4. And then seeing some of the FNaF YouTubers in it was pretty cool. You had those Easter egg fan servicey moments. You know, obviously the creator of the franchise, Scott, that's his name, right?
Yeah, Scott Cawthon.
Yeah. So he said this movie was made for the fans. It was made for the FNaF fans, and I can definitely see that.
Definitely agree with that.
Yeah. But for me, you know, not knowing much about the lore, it was a pretty disappointing film overall. I still enjoyed it. Definitely not my favorite film of the year, but it's definitely not the worst one. It definitely doesn't deserve 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score is very high. It's at 88%. But let's get into our thoughts. Critic versus a fan of the FNaF movie. Let's get right to it. Okay, so I'll start us off with my review on the movie Five Nights at Freddy's FNaF. FNaF, it was still a fun film, as much as I was disappointed. I had a good time. I need to rewatch it. I've made a new little mini row for myself with movies. I shouldn't score it until I've seen it at least 3 times. I'm obviously going to rewatch FNaF. I think it still is a very rewatchable movie. It's not too long at all. It only clocks in at like an hour 40 minutes. So it's not long at all. It builds tension, and throughout the movie I wasn't like bored. I wasn't like, oh, can this hurry up? I felt like the pacing was quite good. It was just the overall story was not exactly what I thought it would be. But as someone who doesn't know the lore, the full lore of the FNaF franchise, what can I expect? From a filmmaking perspective, I think it was fine. The FNaF movie used transitions very, very well. I saw a lot pop up on my TikTok today of just transitions throughout the movie that were perfect. When the little boy goes behind the curtain, then Foxy pops out. That was done very well. When Mike is laying in bed and he's looking at a painting, then that painting starts moving and he's in his dream sequence again. There was a lot of very, very good transitions in the movie. So like the editing, the pacing, that kind of thing was pretty goddamn good in the movie. When I score a movie out of 5, I always do mini categories for it. So I score the writing out of 5, the directing, the acting, the cinematography, the effects, and the sound design, and then get an overall score. For the writing, I did put it at the lowest for an unfortunate 2 out of 5. The reason being, I get this movie was made for the fans. It was very lore heavy. But for a casual like myself, it didn't fully make sense. And for people that have never watched the game, never played the game, don't know a single thing about the franchise, this movie did not do a good job at all at introducing new people to the franchise, I don't feel. I saw someone say something on Twitter, at You Gotta Believe, said, you can still do things for the fans and make your movie accessible to new audiences, which is what successful movie makers do, and I 100% agree. They still could have made this movie incredibly lore heavy for the diehard fans, but it still should have made it accessible for new fans. Sure, arguably it could have, but it didn't do a fantastic job at that. When we look at the other video game adaptation movie that came out this year, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which on my 2023 ranking, I put them like right next to each other. I both give them the same score, which I'll get to in a second. But the Super Mario Bros. Movie was also a little bit disappointing for me, same with the FNaF movie. But I feel like the Super Mario Bros. Made it more accessible to new audiences, even though nearly everyone in the world knows Mario. But Five Nights at Freddy's, it wasn't the film that wanted to invite new audiences to the franchise, which was a little disappointing. I felt like if it did that, it could have been a more clear story, and it could have got me more hyped for the second movie. If I didn't fully understand the first movie, I've got no luck with the second movie unless I understand the lore, because the second movie, I feel like that's just going to go deeper into the games. Obviously, the first one had lots of references to the first game, which I've played a ton. I was playing it today. It had a few references to the fourth game. I couldn't say for any other because I haven't played any other. But for someone, if people out there that have not played anything of the franchise, I really wonder how they're feeling in this situation. And that's kind of where I can see how the critics are only at 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics haven't played any of the games. But then you look at the audience score at 88%. That's mostly the hardcore fans. So the movie was made for the hardcore fans, and I appreciate that. I love my fan service in franchises like Star Wars or Marvel. You know, you look at the fan service in the Ahsoka show, arguably that's fan service, but fan service in The Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett, and then fan service in No Way Home. I'm gonna love that as a fan of those franchises. So people a fan of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise are gonna love the fan service and little Easter eggs they got in this movie, and that's obviously Josh. He obviously would have every frame he probably picked out an Easter egg and all that. So
okay, I probably didn't go to that level.
But
I'd leave that for Matt Pat.
You know, there was Easter eggs I picked up, Easter eggs I recognized, you know, little things I recognized. Some of the YouTubers that went in, I recognized them because I used to watch FNaF YouTubers when I was a little kid. So I did get a little bit of the Easter eggs, but the overall story was, this is all over the place, and that's why I give the writing of the movie a 2 out of 5, which is unfortunate because I know Scott, you know, fired a ton of writers to try to get the perfect script. And hey, this is the perfect script for him. This is the perfect script for fans, sure. But as we go into a Five Nights at Freddy's 2, I'm not excited. I just can't be if it's going to be even more lore heavy than the first movie. And do I really want to learn all that lore? I don't know. I don't know if I'm that dedicated yet. But Josh, what do you think, being the FNaF franchise fan, being the fan of the franchise, what do you think watching that movie? I know there was one particular scene you thought was goofy, and I think the whole internet thinks was goofy. They built a whole little castle on the fourth night or something. But hey,
I don't know where to even start. I don't know what point to start from. Because yes, I will get to that scene. I'm not a big fan of that. But this movie to me is exactly what we were looking for as a FNaF fan. Fans of the franchise who know the lore, have played the games, maybe even read the books, and, you know, even seen some of like the fan created stuff on like YouTube and the fan games. This is the movie that we've been waiting over 8 years for. This movie features references to basically every single release in the franchise, not just the games, but there were also books. They had literal like rumor/theory characters in the movie. I know when we first see the parts and service room, we see Sparky the dog, who was actually a rumored animatronic from FNaF 1.
I did get that one.
He's probably the oldest rumor in the whole franchise. Back when the first game came out, there was always the rumor about, oh, there's a dog somewhere. There's the dog animatronic. It's Sparky the dog. And obviously that was never really a thing, but for a bit of fan service that was thrown into the movie. Heaps of other things. Now that the movie's actually been out for a couple days and fans have been able to get a hold of footage of the film, people have gone ahead and like turned up the brightness in some of the shots and seen what we're speculating to be the puppet from FNaF 2 in there. Obviously we don't know, but that's what FNaF is. We expected this movie to be just like the games, and it is. It comes out, we give it a couple days, give or take, and all of a sudden there's so many rumors and theories flying around all over the internet. The fans are speculating what's going to happen next.
I've seen lots of theories online.
And the good thing about the FNaF franchise is that Scott really uses this to create the next game. He sees what are the common theories floating around, what are the ideas that are gaining traction that people like the sound of, and he finds some way to sneak it into the next game. And he's done that with the movie. This movie feels like the games, but just on a big screen. It's just a good, and to get to the actual movie part of it, ignoring the fan service and the technicality, getting to just ignoring all that, just this as just a standalone movie, I still think it's pretty good. Although I do agree with what you say, it's probably not the greatest for someone who's brand new to the franchise.
Yeah, exactly.
You really do have to have like a good grasp of what's going on before you go in there.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're just some mum or dad taking their kids to the movie, you're going to sit there blank going, what the hell is going on?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You can't, and they can't just go and do a quick Google search during or after the movie to figure it out. No, you need to sit down and watch some 6-hour lore video that explains everything. But the movie itself, the writing, I actually thought the writing was good. The pacing is probably one of my biggest credibilities for this film. I feel like it had really good pacing.
Yeah,
the hour 40, hour 50 runtime was perfect.
Like yeah, it didn't feel like
there
that.
There was like maybe one moment in the film where I started to notice the runtime, and that was towards the middle. But I'm not complaining about that, because that, although towards like the halfway point of the film, it did start to get a little bit boring, it was still essential for plot setup for the final act, which was perfect in my opinion.
The final act was very cool, I must agree. You know, the film did have its moments, and the final act was one of those moments that was spectacular. It was a twist I didn't think of throughout watching that movie.
The fans knew exactly what was happening.
So you saw that coming.
The critics and fans are going to have an entirely different, they're going to have a different opinion and review on the movie, but that's also because it's like we're watching two different movies.
Yeah.
We knew that Steve Raglan was William Afton. He's the main antagonist of the whole franchise. People know him perfectly. He's the most popular Springtrap and / William Afton is the most popular character in the franchise. We knew it was him from the start. We literally saw the Spring Bonnie suit very early on in the film, and we saw it in the trailer as well. We knew exactly what was going to happen.
They did a very good job at hiding that to us fans, or us people watching the movie that didn't know that. I didn't know that, and when he pulled that Spring Bonnie mask off, I was like, oh my god, wow. That was a very cool twist. Probably my favorite thing of the movie. They did do that very good, very well, and I will praise them for that. Yeah, that was very cool. It was. I was like, okay, cool.
I'm going back to talking about the actual movie. The other big positive I have for the movie, other than the pacing, was the use of sound to really emphasize, particularly the animatronics themselves. Because this movie, they chose to go with making it PG-13 and so it could be more accessible to people, because Scott knows that FNaF is also still pretty popular in younger audiences. It's a very big gateway horror franchise. People start with FNaF and then they start going into the more higher rated complex things, although FNaF is still complex. But they did really well with that M rating. There was a lot more gore. It wasn't really gore, but it was a lot more violent and dark than you'd expect from an M movie. I mean, they played around with the rating a fair bit by making the sound really good, just the crunching when Freddy bit that crate in half. They used the silhouette to make that kill happen, to look as violent as it was.
The use of PG-13 gore was very good, because obviously you show that without the silhouettes, the shadows, the sound, it's gonna end up being rated MA or R in America.
Yeah.
So the use to keeping it rated PG-13, it was still very cool. The sound design when the crunch, and then the silhouettes and the shadows of when that chick's, I think it was the babysitter's head got crunched and then her body falls. That was very cool, and they did use that very good. That was another thing I want to praise, is the cinematography was outstanding in this movie. Just the way they shot things.
Even outside the kill, so the animatronics themselves, they were fully practical, which I always say practical over CG. That's just the golden rule. And even seeing the behind the scenes footage honestly makes it a better experience, because you just know that they're actually there.
Yeah,
but
it's
even
cool.
with that, they still added sound as an extra layer on top of that to really add to like the complexity of their design. You can hear like the metal clunking and all of the different parts moving around. The sound was incredible, and with sound, the music as well. I think that the opening theme in the opening credits might be one of my favorite
themes were very good.
like kind of themes in
themes.
movie.
Yeah.
No, just not even horror, just in movies.
Yeah.
Plus the Springtrap / like Spring Bonnie theme when he gets introduced at the end is also really good.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get to that in a second. I feel like Spring Bonnie is another highlight.
Yeah.
But in terms of it just being a movie in itself, I think it was really well directed. It was really well produced, really well edited. But
yeah,
I do have a few slight, I wouldn't say problems, but just things about the film. Now, looking at this from a horror movie perspective, it's not scary in the slightest.
No, I expected a lot more jump scares. That was one of my biggest disappointments. The games are jump scary. The jump scares. That's what got us as little kids, was the jump scares. I wanted a lot more, and that was probably not the biggest disappointment with it, but there was no jumps. There was 2 jump scares that weren't.
I mean, at the same time, I'm happy with that, because one of the biggest criticisms with horror, particularly the Conjuring franchise, I'm looking at you, is that they just rely on cheap jump scares to build up tension. This movie still had a decent bit of tension in some scenes, but that was because they really did a good job at establishing like the stakes of the situation and really delving into the complex emotions of each character.
This would be the one movie I would be acceptable for those kind of jump scares, because it's a Five Nights at Freddy's movie.
Yes, I do definitely expect there to be jump scares. I mean, when Foxy came out in the movie at one point, they did actually use the OG jump scare sound from FNaF 1. It was very hard to hear though. I think a lot of people would have missed it.
Yeah.
But
I want to touch on the
horror perspective. Wasn't like anything too crazy. Again, it definitely serves as like a gateway horror film. It's not scary. The jump scares get you, but it's just Balloon Boy, and that's Scott taking the piss out of the fact that everyone hates him. Yeah, that little guy was the only thing. And I want to touch on the fact that I was kind of disappointed with like the characters of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, the animatronics. We didn't get as much as I thought we would, but then again, there is still the whole story of it. But I feel like we never saw Freddy. I mean, from a fan point of view, you do kind of expect that away, because really, in the like whole overarching lore and story of the franchise, those 4 animatronics are really irrelevant.
Yeah.
Freddy, like, but they're still important. Don't get me wrong; they still are very important. But by the time you get to the later games, they become kind of irrelevant. It's Spring Bonnie, Golden Freddy, the puppet. They're the main focal points of the lore. They're the driving force.
I just expect to see them more.
I wasn't surprised that we didn't see them that much, but who I did hope that we saw more of was Spring Bonnie. I feel like Matthew Lillard was kind of underutilized in the movie. He only appears at the start and at the end.
At the end.
But when he's there. Like, he does a very, very good job. I mean, it's Matthew Lillard. We know him as Stu Marker. We know him as Shaggy.
Yeah, obviously, Shaggy.
His character in the movie is kind of a mix between the two.
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of his character in the movie as Afton's kind of a mix. Oh my god, I had another voice crack. His character in the movie is kind of like a mix between the two. But when he's there. The Springlock scene at the end, again, really doing a good job with the sound for the PG-13 rating. Although you didn't really see much, and if you look at some of the fan animations on YouTube, it's way more grotesque and violent than that. But with that rating, they did a good job just to show the pain he was going through. I did see a lot of people criticize about the fact that, you know, this guy's getting impaled in the chest and his arms being ripped apart and whatnot, and he's just sitting there with a relatively blank face. Like, people were expecting him to just get up and scream. But I think also that they did that because they wanted to show that he was still a professional at what he was doing, because he was trying to stay calm to not accidentally trigger any more spring locks.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of people kind of missed with that scene, is that he's like, all right, I know the drill, like I know the procedure, I need to just stay calm, don't do any sudden movements so I don't it completely destroyed, although that still ended up happening. But his character was so good in the movie.
No, I didn't.
I don't know where to go from there.
I didn't want to bring this up, but I'm going to. I get it. I get it's going to be unrealistic, but the consequences of the actions are insanely unrealistic. Like the guy, what's his name? Spring Bonnie. His daughter is literally a cop. She knew everything he's done. If they got like detectives on that shit, they would figure it out.
One thing I do want to bring up is there is one major plot point that was changed in the movie from the games, and that is with Vanessa and Afton.
Vanessa, yeah.
In the games, Vanessa is completely unrelated to William Afton in every way. They're not related at all. They're not family. But Vanessa's almost like a servant to Afton in a way. She appears in the later games. Like, she's a brand new character. And she's almost, not necessarily a servant, but like after Afton's gone, she's kind of like the one doing his biddings when he's gone. They obviously, to make it fit more with the movie plot, they made a real big plot point change and made Vanessa Afton's daughter. In the games, Afton's daughter gets killed really early on as like an 8-year-old, again by one of the suits. So again, huge plot point change. A lot of fans are upset about that.
Yeah.
I personally don't really care because they did that to make it fit
the story,
the movie and the narrative more.
Yeah.
I completely expected the movie to be completely different from the games. I didn't expect there to be any like connection. Well, I didn't expect it to be canon by any means, because that's what they said. It's a different universe almost. So there were a lot of plot point changes, but they were done to make it a better movie. Yeah. And I think it's good as that, because like you said before, you didn't expect those plot twists anywhere at all in the movie. You didn't expect Steve Raglan to be Green Bonnie. You didn't expect Vanessa to be Afton's daughter.
No. So I thought they were really cool. They were probably... that makes me want to put up the writing, because the writing is what I've got at the lowest right now at 2.5. But they're only they're my two favorite things of the film, was those plot twists. But the overall writing of the story isn't clear to a new fan or to someone who's doesn't know anything about the franchise. Like, this is not a good movie when you're introducing someone to the franchise.
No, but I feel like as a standalone movie, completely unrelated to anything, it's still good, because it sets up its characters, it builds up the stakes, it shows you the complexity into their emotions, gives you your big twist at the end, and then shows the final impact of all of it. So I think it's good from that point.
Sure. I overall give the film, after doing all my little, looking at everything from the writing, directing, the acting, the cinematography, the effects, the sound design, my final rating for the movie ended up being a 3 out of 5. So it's like dead. It's mid. It's mid for me. 3 out of 5.
Well, considering I have way more positives to say about the movie than negatives, I only really have like I only have about 2 negatives with the movie, and I have about like 15, 20 positives.
Yeah.
I was initially gonna give it a 5. I'm not joking. I was gonna give it a 5, but
what did you put it down here for?
4.5? I didn't want to give it anything too crazy because of like recency bias. The movie just came out in like that honeymoon phase where it's like, oh my god,
yeah,
I want to let it sit for a bit. But even after letting it sit, I still think it's really good. So I settled on a 4.5.
4.5, yeah, just
because of that scene in the middle.
Okay, 4.5.
I gave it a 4.5 because as a fan and as a non-fan, I think everyone who saw the movie can agree that fort scene in the middle just completely threw off and completely killed what they had building up.
Stupid as hell.
It's like they were building up so much tension where it's like, oh, hang on, Abby's like getting really close to the end. And then 15 seconds later, they're building the fort. Bonnie's falling over and giving a little thumbs up for comedic relief. Like,
yeah.
That, honestly, I was not smiling during that scene at all. That annoyed me.
Yeah, it kind of,
I still give it a 4.5. And I gotta say, although, like you said before, there really wasn't that much of Freddy in the movie.
No.
I feel like Foxy and the cupcake were the real
best
MVPs of the movie. Foxy especially.
Foxy was the most
aggressive.
Yeah.
The cupcake obviously did a fair bit as well.
Yeah.
The Cupcake and Foxy, bro, they were the MVP.
No, definitely. And I hope, moving forward we get more Freddy. It's Five Nights at Freddy's. But looking at my ranking of 2023 films now, I've seen 16 movies this year. And unfortunately, the FNaF just made my top 10. It's sitting in 10th place as my 10th favorite film of the year out of 16. So it's more to the end than it is to the start of my list. The start of my list is Oppenheimer, and the end of my list is The Nun 2. And between the two video game adaptations, I already know you're putting Five Nights at Freddy's over Mario. But I've got both, for me, were disappointing. I've got the Super Mario Bros. Movie at 9th on my list, and I've got the FNaF movie at 10th on my list. I give them both a 3 out of 5, so no, both video game adaptations this year for me were disappointing. It is what it is, 3 out of 5. It's not incredibly the worst. It's not a 1, it's not a 2, it's a 3, it's a solid 3 in the middle. But no, I still gotta watch Across the Spider-Verse, so I'll see. That might knock FNaF out of my top 10. So that's my ranking. Where would you put FNaF, though, in your 2023 films ranked?
I'd probably give it... Oh, no, it's tough because we had a lot of phenomenal movies this year. I'd probably rank it as... Right now, I want to say my favorite movie of the year.
Wow.
Because there was no other movie. There was no other movie besides enjoyment, both in the hype leading up to the movie and actually watching it, and seeing the response after the movie. I haven't really felt this much excitement and joy like I have with the FNaF movie, except, like I said, maybe Scream 6. In terms of my ranking, like I said before, I give it a 4.5 out of 5. Go up to a 5 in the future. It may go down to a 4.
Are you there? Hello? Okay, I'm gonna wrap up. Josh is just disconnected from the call. Don't we love technical difficulties? But I've checked Josh's letterbox. Josh has it near the front of his list. But he'd probably do some shuffling. He's currently got it as his favorite movie of the year. For me, it's Oppenheimer. I think Oppenheimer is just the best movie of the year. Enjoyment-wise, I think probably Creed 3. Creed 3 was obviously, for me, very different to what I thought it would be. I thought it would have sucked, and obviously I loved it. Go watch my Creed 3 review back in March with Joseph. Talking to Joseph, he's coming back on the podcast soon, don't worry. I know he's nearly been gone for a month. He'll make his return soon. He's just... life's been happening, But that's our FNaF review. Let us know what you thought of the movie down below in the comments. Thank you guys for listening to our review on the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Obviously, thank you, Josh, for joining, but I don't know where he's gone. I'm still here. He's back. Hey, lots of technical difficulty tonight, but we got everything said, I think. And you guys, let us know what you thought of the FNaF movie down below in the comments. As I said, I give it a 3 out of 5. Josh gives it a 4.5. Yeah, I do hope all this actually recorded. So if you guys are listening or watching this, hey, all positive, everything works. And no, I'll see you guys next time on the Movie Pod, whenever that may be. Alrighty, guys, I'm out. Bye.